Well, deep in the jungle that is our garden, there's a tomato variety that we haven't really talked a lot about, but we've been growing for quite a long time, since 2008, so quite a while. We're going to explain exactly why this tomato variety has sort of stood the test of time as far as inclusion in our gardens. So here is the variety, and this is called Black Prince tomatoes. Now, unfortunately this year, they're looking a little worse for wear at face value, but they're actually doing better this year than they have for us as far as growth, I guess, of both the plant and the tomato than they have in years past. Now, of course, the big hit to these tomatoes in 2021 was the falling of the apple tree, which basically shaded them. And you can see we've pruned it around a bit, but they actually didn't seem to mind it, which is kind of interesting. So last year we really talked a lot about our Scotia tomatoes, which we'll link the video for that up above. But the Scotias are a determinate variety that we just love as I guess your main crop, all-purpose type red classic tomato. These Black Prince are very different type of tomato. Now, they're an indeterminate, which a lot of the other varieties we grow are actually indeterminate. And I could go on and on and on about why we like indeterminate tomatoes so much. But this variety in particular, like I say, we started with way back in 2008, and it stuck with us mostly because of flavor. It is my favorite of all the tomatoes we grow, although there's been several other varieties that we've grown since that time that are almost as good, but for different reasons. I don't know how to describe the flavor, but they're very uniquely flavored tomato, and I'll show you in a second what they look like. But I'll also talk about some of the negatives of them and how the flavor side of it just outshines those negatives. So here we are, kind of down and up close and personal with this tomato variety. And right off the bat, you can basically see one of the biggest, I guess, downsides to this variety is they're extremely prone to cracking. This is something that we have actually been, I guess, mildly selecting against over time, but it's a long process. As you can see from this batch, in this year, these tomatoes are just producing like mad. In 2020, we had a lot of blossom end rot, which I think a lot of people suffered from. And again, that's one of the negatives of this variety is they're quite a soft tomato, so they are prone to those sort of issues. But as I said at the beginning, the flavor of these is absolutely amazing and makes them, in my opinion, like an indispensable part of the garden. Now this batch isn't quite ready, but you can see from my hand, they're a decent sized tomato. This one in particular is just a monster this year, but they're a decent sized tomato. I would almost say they do a little better with a bit of shade. As we say, these particular vines kind of got shaded by the apple tree that fell on them, and they really, aside from a little bit of broken foliage, they don't seem a whole lot worse for the wear. So this particular variety is obviously exceptionally good for fresh eating, like slicing. It's not a beefsteak variety, but we basically use it quite extensively when they're sort of in season as sort of sliced tomatoes for tomato sandwiches and stuff. But they also make a really good tomato juice because they're quite a juicy tomato, and they have a unique flavor that they bring. People laugh at me. I say they've almost got like a smoky barbecue-y type flavor. Very not typical tomato flavor. Let's just put it that way. We don't grow a large volume of them because we tend to use them as a fresh eating tomato. And I think for that purpose alone, I would highly recommend this variety. Now, I do know there are a few other varieties that are related to it. I think Black Crim might be one of them. I'd have to look up some of the others, which I think are improved varieties, because I believe the Black Prince is one of the older sort of predecessors to some of those newer varieties. And I do know some of those new varieties don't have the same issues with cracking, etc. But I have tried some of them, and I don't think the flavor quite compares to this variety. So even though from a perfect looking tomato perspective, it's not the best. It's not going to be a show winner for the perfect looking tomato. I think it's definitely a variety that's worth trying if you want something a little bit unique, a little bit old, and very worthwhile on the flavor department if you enjoy fresh eating tomatoes. I don't think you can really go wrong with this variety. So on that note, that's kind of a little share on one of the lesser talked about varieties we have, but I think that it standing the test of time when other tomato varieties have come and gone really speaks a lot to the taste of this variety. And whether you try the Black Prince or not, I think that uniqueness, that unique culinariness of tomatoes or specific tomato varieties makes them so worthwhile to add to your garden, because let's face it, tomatoes are the premier crop to have multiple varieties that have different characteristics and still grow them in the same garden. So yeah, I would highly recommend giving Black Prince a try. They are well worth the little bit of hassle.